Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy Love. How are you?
Kia ora, Pat. I'm okay. It's been an exciting old weekend, hasn't it?
Oh my gosh. I was going to say, obviously tonight we're going to talk about the biggest news story in the world at the moment. No matter where you look, everyone's talking about it. And the question, of course, is, should Beauden Barrett start the next All Blacks test match at number 10 or not? So, yes, that's the biggest story in the world at the moment, the biggest conversation we need to have. Do you have any thoughts around that? Beauden Barrett at number 10, should he start?
Well, as you well know, I've spent a lot of time poring over Excel spreadsheets of performance of past and potentially future All Blacks. I assume we're talking about All Blacks, sports ball in general. Look, I've been up since just after 7 today because I have someone from England in my very house at all times. And apparently there was some sort of sports going on. Apparently there was some chance of something coming home. I don't know.
Of course. Don't need to tell you what we're talking about, Trump. Actually I was going to say another one of those days another of those weeks where things happen on a Friday. Actually happened yesterday, Chewy. It's actually just yesterday's news. It's incredibly close. And tonight we're going to play for you. If you're a patron, you might have already seen it. I got a chance to hang out with a former FBI special agent this morning. Had a chat with him about what did he see, what didn't he see, how does he interpret what's going on. So we will play, obviously, the event for you at some stage, but why don't we play it when we play him, because we played in that conversation first and we'll come back to it. Maybe we'll do that first. And look, there is so much news going on at the moment. Darlene Tanner spoke to TVNZ News tonight. We might look at that tomorrow.
Of course, I haven't even seen that.
Yeah, well, that's the point. The Goldsmith interview that we're going to play off Q&A was 26 minutes long. For the first half, they talked about crime. For the second half, they talked about his role in communications. Aren't touching the communications one tonight. Maybe we might have a look at that tomorrow night as well. There's just so much going on at the moment. You'll appreciate there is a lot. We're also going to have a look at some of the reports coming out of the US about the Trump situation. Many of you will know who Brian Tyler Cohen is. He hosts probably one of the top 2 or 3 most successful YouTube news conversation shows, a bit like this. He's got a couple of million followers. He did a really interesting breakdown today of the difference between the political left and the political right when it comes to political violence. What the right does when there's political violence committed against them, what the right does when there's political violence committed against the left, and what the left and the right do that way as well. So it's really interesting to look at as well. And also the person who got the first interview with Trump after the shooting was on CNN for 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll just play that because she gets to tell what he was saying at the moment. So yeah, look, there's so much going on at the moment. I thought we might start though, Chewy, with a really important question. And that question is, do you know when a monarch butterfly, when the caterpillars, when they make their chrysalis, do you know how they make their chrysalis? I've learned something today. I'm trying to show off because I've learned something. Do you know how they make it? I won't drop in it. What I would always think is they would basically spin something around them.
Oh no, they turn themselves to goo.
Yeah, but I'm going to play it for you. I'm not playing with any sound in case it's got that. They turn themselves inside out. So there's your caterpillar about to become a chrysalis. This is very important news, guys. And I would expect, my idea would have been, or my thoughts would have been, somehow they start to spin the web around them and they turn it into a chrysalis. Then inside it, they metamorphosize. Well, actually what happens is underneath the skin is the chrysalis. It's really bizarre. I'd never seen this before. And be honest in the chat if you've seen it or not. Have a look at this, Joe. I'm not going to play the audio. So it actually peels its skin off.
You're not playing the audio because it's screaming the entire time.
But look, the chrysalis is under the skin.
Don't like it.
Isn't that weird?
Alien, kill it with fire.
Isn't that weird? Then it goes on to do the whole thing about coming out as a butterfly. We'll see that now when we went to primary school before. I saw that today and I was like, gosh, yeah. Someone wants to know if that's what happened to Trump. Not entirely, but you know.
Bug for growth.
Thank you. I want some shout outs, Some shout outs to Raywin and to Oratiri and to Mike and to Donna and to Edward and to Tawhiri, who all became patrons over the last few days. You will see your names in the credits at the end of the show. And if you'd like to be a patron, if you'd like to support what we're doing in a tangible way, then you can head to patreon.com/Big Hero News. As I said, the conversation I had with Ken Gray, former FBI special agent, is already there. And I thought, Chewy, I've received some of the audio and video files from last week's chat we did with the NZEI panel we had with the NZEI.
Cool.
I'm going to put them on the Patreon because they are, they're all recorded on just cell phones and with echoey noise and that. So they're probably not the best for broadcast. But I thought what I might do is turn all the clips into one long file, and I'm going to put that on Patreon as well. So when I get myself a spare 5 minutes, I'll put that together and I'll put it on Patreon as well. So if you like what we do, if you're enjoying what we do, if you want to get behind what we do, patreon.com/Big Hero News is a really easy way to do it. So Chewy, now the question becomes, where do we start tonight's show? We could start with the FBI agent. That's a pre-recorded conversation. I think it's going to be Trump. Or we could start with Brian Tyler Cohen. Or we could start with the journalist doing the first story on CNN, the first time that he spoke to the press. What are your thoughts?
Oh, Jesus. Dealer's choice, I guess.
Yeah, dealer's choice.
Let's do the interview. I haven't seen the interview. Okay. Then you tell everyone how wonderful they are while I go and get it off the hard drive. Man, you guys, literally so good. All of the time. I'm in awe.
Totally, so excellent.
You're breathtaking. Every single one of you.
You're so brilliant and so excellent.
It's not just what you do. It's how you are. Always so squared away. I assume. Well presented, is what I've heard.
Don't you just think that? I mean, if you were going to paint a picture of a former federal officer, former police officer, former person in the law who's now retired. He's an academic now. He's working at a university. That's the picture you'd end up drawing.
Yeah,
it is, isn't it? Completely. So he plays a part. Now, Ken Gray is working for New Haven University now, doing lecturing there. But he said to me, I was like, I talked to him at 6 p.m. their time. You're going to have an easy night off? He goes, I've got 3 more interviews. I've done 8 this morning, and I've got 3 more to go after you, because he is in demand. So you may have seen him elsewhere. If you haven't, then I'll just call this a world exclusive because you won't know. So this is me having a chat with Ken Gray earlier today, specifically around the assassination attempt at Donald Trump, how an ex-FBI agent looks at it. Here we go. We want to welcome to the show Ken Gray. Ken Gray is a former special agent in the FBI, currently a distinguished lecturer in the University of New Haven Department of Criminal Justice. Ken also teaches courses in Homeland Security. Ken, probably the most qualified person in the world to talk to this topic. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Maybe you could just explain to us, first of all, we are going to have a look at the situation with Trump. We're going to have a look at the footage. We're going to get your expertise on that. But what was your role in the FBI? Like, what would you do? Do they have ranks in the FBI? Where did you get? What was your? What does a special agent do in particular?
So, special agents do investigations, collect up evidence for cases, and other tasks as required by law. I spent my time primarily focused in on counterterrorism matters, right, but I also worked national security matters.
Okay.
I was a crisis manager for our division, and for 9 years I was a member of the New Haven SWAT team.
Wow. Okay. I've been hearing some conversations. In fact, I looked at a conversation this morning before we came on with a current Republican politician who used to be a sniper. And it was interesting to hear his take on this whole incident with, I don't want to downplay this assassination attempt on Donald Trump, rather than trying to downplay it whatsoever. If it's okay with you, I think what we'll do is actually have a look at the minute 45 or so of the footage that happened around Donald Trump, and then maybe just get your take on what you see before we go into what happens from here. So this is the footage from yesterday. This is the footage of Donald Trump. It's in portrait because it's on my Twitter feed, but we get everything, we see everything. And actually what I find more important, Ken, on some level, is we hear everything. We hear the conversation with the Secret Service agents after they've come in. And that's quite an interesting part of this as well. So there's about 10, 15 seconds before the attempt happens, and we'll just have a look at the footage together. Here we go.
And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Move his hair. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the spare. Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready. You ready? Down. Shooters down. Are we good? Shooters down. Shooters down. Are we good to move? Shooters down. We're good to move. We're clear. We're clear. Let's move. We're clear.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
And then he makes his way back to the truck. Those images, the images of the fist pumps, which he's still doing now, and there's been some unbelievable photos that people managed to catch just through this kind of 30-second moment. They obviously will be photos that go down in the historical record as being an unprecedented incident to a former president and a current runner for president again. When you just see the incident, you've seen it, obviously, with your experience and background, what do you see?
So Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the president, the vice president, and in these cases, the candidates for the next election for president. And I see Secret Service executing their job. That is that the president was busy giving his speech. At one point, he turns his head slightly, and when he turns his head slightly, you see him grab his ear, and then he drops to the ground himself. And then Secret Service agents pile on top of him, using their bodies as a shield to protect the president. Then when they get him up, they form a shield around his body and then proceed to move him off the rally stage there and into a Suburban to leave the event and to go on to a safe area and to the hospital to have him evaluated at that point. While they had him on the ground, they were checking him to see whether or not there was additional injuries, and that continued on once they got him into the Suburban. But in addition to the Secret Service agents you saw jump on top of the former president to use their bodies as shields, you also saw members of the CAT team, which is the counter assault team, the agents that were wearing the green jumpsuits and having the helmets and having the long guns. Their job is to apply suppression fire if there was a continued attack on the former president, and move towards the threat to provide a safe zone for them to get the former president out of the area.
Okay.
Additionally, there were counter snipers that were above the venue that once the shot was fired, they located the sniper and they provided a counterfire to that, which neutralized the threat, killed the shooter in this case. And so there were several different components going on here by Secret Service. I thought that the time that was spent on the rally stage there, it should have been somewhat briefer.
Right.
The fact that the former president giving the fist bumps the way that he did, while it may be very colorful and may be great as far as footage goes for his campaign, I think that that had there been another shooter there, that might have been an opportunity for that shooter to deliver fire on President Trump. And so I think they spent a little bit too much time on the stage, and they should have gotten him off the stage as quickly as possible, and screw the shoes that he said, wait, get my shoes. He should have been taken off the stage right away and gotten to that Suburban and gotten out of there. That being said, I was not there. I'm not a Secret Service agent. I'm a former FBI agent, and I'm not trained the way that they are trained. So maybe there was reasons why they were taking their time to get him off the stage that I'm unaware of.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you just made. I never thought about that, if there was a second shooter, because it's unquestionable. And look, you know, where we sit in politics, Ken, in this show, is we sit on the left of politics, but we play a fair game. Like, we call balls and strikes, as you'd say in America. And those photographs of him pumping his fist will be, you know, on every billboard and every, you know, going up to the election. So I was thinking about what you would have thought about that happening and how much control the Secret Service has. Like, there was the conversation around January the 6th where he wanted to go to, they call the vehicle the Beast or something that he travels in, to go down to the Capitol with them, and the Secret Service agents went, "You're not going." Like, they had autonomy to say, not happening. In that instance, it looked like it was a bit of both. They had autonomy to get him off stage, but he was able to, and when I say this, it's not I'm not saying this like to, well, am I saying this to criticize him? I mean, it was very clever what he did from a marketing point of view, the pump fist and all that sort of thing. But they didn't quite have the autonomy to get him off stage no matter what, as you're saying. And I'd never thought, gosh, what if there was a second shooter? So that's a very interesting thing you said. And just to show people as well, this is a photo that's come out in the last 24 hours. It's a bit hard to see if you're on a smaller screen, but right here there is like a trailing bullet photo. So that was as close as it was to former President Trump, to actually no longer having former President Trump.
Had this bullet been an inch to the right or 2 inches to the right, we would be having a different conversation right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we obviously here in New Zealand have a very different culture, especially around guns, than in America. Now, it's a horrible thing to say, but we sometimes joke when there is a mass shooting in America, and we'll say, oh, it must be Tuesday because there was another mass shooting, because they seem to happen. Well, I think according to maybe even the FBI, there's a number that have to die in a shooting to be a mass shooting, and they do happen every day. Like, we only ever hear about the Columbine high schools and that thing on this side of the world, but there seems to be, you know, significant shootings every single day. So whilst this is shocking, and it's shocking to see from this point of view, it also doesn't seem out of the bag for that American gun culture. I mean, if it wasn't the president, if it was person X. Do you want to speak to that?
I think that the shocking part of this is that Secret Service has a lot of security going on at this venue.
Yeah.
That inside the secure area, nobody had a weapon on them because of the efforts that Secret Service took to they had magnetometers there, they patted down people, and no one brought a weapon into that was not law enforcement or Secret Service.
Yeah.
Outside the secure area, it was not as secure. And that's why this shooter was able to get to the position that he was able to get to and get the shot off. And so the shocking part of this is that despite all the efforts of Secret Service to make this into a secure venue, that a shooter was able to get into a position, an elevated position like this, and to get rounds off before they were taken out.
Yeah, there was a very interesting interview on the BBC quite soon after the event happened. I'm sure you've seen it, the world has seen it, about a gentleman saying that they saw someone crawling up towards the building, and they were all pointing to him to tell the police, and that the allegation, I guess, without actually knowing 100%, is that was the shooter, and they seem to be a little bit lackadaisical. The first question I asked you was, what do you see? I guess the way to ask this question in that same sort of frame is, what don't you see? Like, do you have any critiques of what? I mean, we're a long way away, even yourself, and it's only 24 hours later. But what have you read or heard where you think, oh, I didn't see X, which they should have done?
So the FBI is engaged in doing an investigation and gathering up all the information about this, and they will be producing a report.
Right.
I don't have the benefit of the information that they are getting at this point, and so I would be hesitant to try to judge the Secret Service's performance in this particular case. I mean, it's their responsibility. A shooter was able to get off rounds towards President Trump. So there is, by de facto, a failure in security. But whether this failure in security is due to some fault in the security plan, or if this is due to some other issue, I can't say. And I think that that's what the investigation will show. What I would say is that security, it does not start on the day of the rally. Security for an event like this starts days before, weeks before, when there is an advance team that shows up and does a site survey and makes determinations of what areas need to be protected, what areas could be a potential risk. And I would be interested to see in the investigation what this site survey by the advance team had to say about the buildings in the area within the middle ground of the perimeter. The security, you think of it as concentric circles. The inner security is the secure zone where the rally was taking place. The next zone out is the middle zone, which had a couple of buildings in it. And then the far zone was at some distance. The counter snipers were there to handle the distant perimeter. The middle zone was supposed to be being handled by patrols by local and state police there, I believe. And the inner zone was being done by the fact that all the members were going through magnetometers and Secret Service was present there. And so the fact that the shooter was able to get up on top of this building, fall to a position, and get off these shots before he was neutralized means that there was a failure in the security plan.
Yeah. Speaking of the shooter, 20-year-old, isolated male, the political games have already started around why he did this. But what we do know is he donated to a Democratic cause when he was 17, and he was a registered Republican and a member of they're being described as a far-right Second Amendment group called Demolition Ranch. I guess with your former FBI hat on, when you get a suspect, which is now, I guess, confirmed because he's there and they shot him, what do you do next to find out more about who he is and why he did this?
So the FBI's investigation will concentrate in on his home, his friends, his family, his colleagues, and his social media. He has a computer there at his home, presumably. They're going to be mirroring that computer and examining it forensically to determine whether or not he had any postings that would lead one to believe he was planning to carry this out. They will be obtaining all of his posts on social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or Telegram or wherever he might have been doing postings at. That information will be taken and analyzed to try to give us an idea about what this guy was all about and what motivated him. Really, this case is not going to go to court. He's dead.
Yeah.
And so the investigation is trying to determine what happened, what went wrong, and what steps can be taken in future such cases.
You're working at the University of New Haven. That means you're surrounded by 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. And it's Sunday, your time, but you'll be getting back there tomorrow morning, I'm assuming, for work and for school. What do you think the generation who this shooter comes from will be saying tomorrow? In the old days, we used to say at work, around the water cooler, Ken. I don't know what they say today at university, but sitting around the quad, what are they going to be talking about?
So I'm sure that this will be the foremost topic of conversation about what actually happened here. There's a lot of conversation going on social media at this point, and so I'm sure that it will play out on campus as well as on social media. As far as what the thoughts are, the problem is that right at this point, very little information has been released to the public. Yeah. And so any opinions that are expressed are based upon limited data. I think that there was a press conference last night. I expect to see another press conference sometime today to put out additional information. We are learning that the gun was purchased by the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks's father. We are learning that there was explosive devices inside his car as well, and that there was also explosive material inside his residence. And so there's a lot more information to come in this. But we need to hear data to be able to form real opinions about what transpired here. This is not something that is going to be determined within hours or days. This is going to take weeks or maybe even months before we end up getting a final report. As I said, this is not going to play out in court. This is going to play out with a final report that is issued by the FBI on this particular incident. What is important to come out of this is security posture changes by the Secret Service for future such events to stop this from happening again. That happens after any type of similar type of shooting. There's always changes to the security postures.
My last question, Ken, is more of an opinion-based question. The Republican convention is starting this week. Obviously, the incident that happened yesterday has oodles of political consequences around this. Do you have any thoughts as to what this will mean politically for America, good or bad? Any opinions around that?
So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you how this will play out. I know that the RNC starts tomorrow, that the security for the RNC, this is what's called a National Special Security event, an NSSE. It took a long time to put together the security plans for this event, and it's an indoor event as opposed to an outdoor rally. And so the security for this will be very tight. However, I'm sure that the RNC attendees will be energized because of this event. And President Trump showing his readiness by those fist bumps and that he was not going to be stopped, not going to be deterred by this event. I am sure that will play out over the course of the RNC.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what happens from here. Former special agent at the FBI and also distinguished lecturer at the University of New Haven, that is Ken Gray. Ken, thanks so much for giving us some time on the other side of the world to talk about this most shocking incident.
Thank you.
All righty, mighty. There you go. Chewy, I guess you can have first crack, sir. What are your thoughts? I think your mic's off, brother.
There we go. I've been poring over this stuff for the last couple of days, and like there's one thing that is very clear: everybody wants this to be a conspiracy, left or right, doesn't matter. The absence of any real information, people will just fill it full of noise. Biden authorized the hit. It's a false flag. All of this sort of nonsense. And I think that's normal, but disappointing.
I've been really surprised at the amount of anger been thrown at one. I on my Twitter feed when this first happened, I was blamed for the shooting by one of New Zealand's well-known trolls. This is what you get. You caused this. When the left, blah, 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 blah. Then when it came out that he was a registered Republican, that comment got deleted off my Twitter feed. Funnily enough. I know. And the person, I've actually muted that person. They don't know that I saw it, but I saw it. I'll just wait for them to pop up next time. And I'll be, oh, yeah, okay. So yeah. So, but the thing about this guy, it sounds a really weird way to say it. He almost seems like the perfect person to talk about this politically, because he did donate to the left when he was a kid. He did vote for the right when he was an adult. And actually both sides are pointing towards that to say he's yours. No, he's yours. No, he's yours. Well, actually, one of the tweets I put out, in fact, I'll go and grab it, is basically, I talked about people on the right who are going to blame the far left for this. I'm sure none of them were quiet when Nancy Pelosi's husband had his head cracked in by a thing, by a Trump voter.
I saw a screen grab of Donald Trump Jr.'s Twitter feed last Halloween, where he says just preparing for my Halloween costume.
That's part of what Brian BTC talks about.
That was literally my first thought. Is this is a man that has encouraged, walking right up to the line of encouraging political violence, walked right up to the line of nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Some of you Second Amendment folks should do something about Hillary. Right up to encouraging a coup, like really injecting political violence into in a way that just hasn't been done by a candidate before. And that goes for a lot of the Republicans. How often do they pose with guns? We're going to destroy the Democrats, all of this sort of stuff. Those guys have brought that vibe into the discussion. And then we have this. And I would love it if this was a come to Jesus moment where everyone went, oh, maybe we're wrong about this. I think Trump has had a completely different come to Jesus moment based on his quotes that says, he feels like God stopped it from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll get to an interview with the journalist who spoke to him as well. She says some things, maybe not dissimilar to that. This is one of the tweets I put out quite early on. A word of advice: left voters, don't start questioning the Trump incident as a setup, and right voters, don't start to paint this as anything to do with the Democratic Party. It'll be a lone unhinged shooter, and as you can see, if you think about rage farming, that's had about 1,100 interactions. You go to the next one up. As an aside, if he needed any more help, Trump's just won the election. That's had 4,000. And there's another one up here where I say, I do hope anyone blaming Joe Biden or the radical left for the shooting at Trump's rally also blamed the alt-right when Nancy Pelosi's husband got attacked. That had over 5,000. So you can see the kind of balanced conversation that first came out, which was my natural reaction. Is like, guys, just this is no, because you can call it. I mean, to be really frank, if we're in a debating class, Chewy, and you got me to debate when people talk about Trump as being a threat to democracy and we must defeat him, I can see how an unhinged person could take that to defeat him at any cost. Now, that hasn't been said, and equally, that may be true. This is the thing, right? That may all be true. He may be wanting to bring in an authoritarian fascist state. That might all be true. But that's not how you defeat him. And I think that's the one thing we've heard across the board today is he has to be defeated at the ballot box. And then you put into the equation, the guy's a voter for the right. Like, we're never going to know because he's not there to answer the questions, but he's a Republican and he votes for the right, or he was going to vote for the right. It's a really bizarre story, other than mentally sick, unhinged individual. And that's kind of a coverall for, it doesn't have to make logical sense.
Look, there's lots of lessons that the US could learn from this. They're not going to learn any of them. Trump's not going to calm down. I think this is just going to rev him up. I think it's going to put his supporters on, almost a literal war footing. they could learn something about isolated, bullied kids shouldn't be bought guns by their parents. Nobody's going to learn that. It's just a shit show. The other thing, and this is kind of a weird aside, the other thing that's really annoyed me with, I guess, most of the US-based coverage is the use of the word unprecedented. This is an unprecedented attack. And
no, it's not.
It's really not.
Well, but even not that. America, according to the FBI, it's four dead in one incident, have a mass shooting every single day. When Joe Biden, and we're going to show a little clip of Joe Biden when we're doing the conversation from BTC, when Joe Biden says, we don't live in a country, blah, 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 violence is never the answer. I'm like, Joe, do you know what country you live in? How can you stand up now and say, we don't do this, we don't do violence, violence is never the answer, at a country that sells guns and has gun crime like you guys do? I mean, that made me kind of go, oh, you guys don't get it. This is not unprecedented. What you're about to say, Chewy, to do with presidential, attacks, but also, as I said to the previous FBI agent, if it wasn't Donald Trump, this is a multiple times a day incident. People getting shot at in America. So yeah, I agree, not unprecedented.
I also like America is a country that solves its problem with the ballot, not the bullet. Again, historically, no, not really.
Yeah.
And certainly on a worldwide scale, no, not at all.
No.
You tend to solve problems at the end of a laser-guided bomb. But yeah, I don't know if this is going to shock people out of the pipeline that they seem to be locked into. Certainly touching base with a lot of my US friends, their reaction is after seeing those photos with Trump with his hand held high, they're like, this is going to play in every story about this. Every newspaper is going to carry it. That's the election. That's it. It doesn't matter at this point.
I don't mind living on this side of the world and saying that because we have no influence. I think that's the case. I tweeted that hours after those photos came out. And it's interesting, I've been watching through the weekend. I know many people don't like Vosh as a commentator, but he's been pretty left-leaning. He was like, Trump looks like a alpha male. He goes, I hate the guy, but he's being honest. Cenk Uygur, see, it doesn't matter what you think of the guy. He looks like, a hero in this photo. And that'll be the imagery to take him all the way through. I also think, though, now this is now my wishful thinking, if Trump had an ounce of smarts, or if he had people around him with an ounce of smarts that could get through to him, he could right now change the narrative of this election. He could do the opposite to what you're saying you think he's going to do. And I think he's probably going to do as well, Chewy, and go to this. And he could change the narrative now and look presidential and look like the unifier in chief and romp home. Like, honestly, if they had any kind of smarts in that, whatever their equivalent of the ninth floor is for a candidate, if he spun that to go like, like the court case, if they can do it to me, they can do it to you. It's like, you guys don't want these guns to be aimed at you. It was aimed at me, and that's okay. And now we're going to do the right thing and go to the ballot. We're going to go to the ballot. All this rhetoric's going to stop. We're going to go to the ballot. He would romp home, and he would be seen by many who are that kind of floating middle or not that involved in politics like we are as a different person. Now, I don't think he can do it. I don't think he's got the wherefore to be that balanced.
He's chosen by God at this point.
But if he did, that would be, like, I actually think playing the more aggressive chosen by God hand will be the only thing that could possibly still defeat him, because that will get the backup of the other side, the ones that don't want God in their government. Whereas if he just played it as a peacemaker now, he could. I don't think he's going to do it. Don't get me wrong. I don't
think he's capable. I don't think he's capable.
Look, speaking of, you've already mentioned a couple of. Let's get to the Brian Tyler Cohen conversation. Now, I know it's a bit weird that we're kind of showing someone who sort of, much more professionally, but does what we want to do. But he's assembled a whole bunch of clips, and I just want to play 3 of them for you. So the first one is the instance where the GOP conservative commentators and politicians are blaming the Democrats for this shooting. Have a look.
Mike Collins, a Republican lawmaker from Georgia, tweeted, "Joe Biden sent the order." Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote, "We are in a battle between good and evil. The Democrats are the party of pedophiles, murdering the innocent, unborn, violence and bloody, meaningless, and endless wars. The Democrat Party is flat out evil, and yesterday they tried to murder President Trump." J.D. Vance wrote, "Today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination."
Look, again, if we were debating and I pulled out of the card I make up an argument for that, I could. I could debate on stage. I don't necessarily believe it myself, but I could debate that point on stage. That must be stopped at all costs. I could make an argument for it if I was in a debating competition. Just being honest with you.
And of course, Lauren Boebert posted this.
I do believe that Joe Biden is responsible for the shooting today. Kyle Clark, an innocent supporter of President Trump, someone who loved President Trump and was there exercising their right to support him, lost their life today. Everyone who has called him a fascist, everyone who has called him a threat to democracy, who said that he should be put in a bullseye, as Joe Biden said.
I don't know if that's true, that Joe Biden said that, but I will remind you also of, what was their name from Alaska? Sarah Palin, who had a whole lot of bullseyes over maps of America, which were counties that we needed to win. And one of them was, I was going to say Tulsi Gabbard. That's the wrong name. And she got shot in the head by a supporter of Sarah Palin. The name's just popping out of my head. You watch the chat, come up with it straight away. So, political rhetoric, and this is why we don't hold responsible the people for using rhetoric to the actions. Because it's like we were talking about, we're going to fight to the death to win this. We would all use that kind of thing. We don't literally mean to the death. It's hyperbole. But hyperbole to an unhinged person can end up in some pretty horrific situations. I'm going to keep playing. Is that cool?
Yep.
All right.
They need to have some very deep reflection tonight before another tragedy like this takes place.
First of all, the Democratic Party and Joe Biden did not try to assassinate Donald Trump. The shooter was a registered Republican. In fact, because that's inconvenient for the narrative, now conservatives are saying stuff like this.
Don't read too much into the political affiliation, because James Comey, also a registered Republican.
Apparently, political affiliation is only exploitable if it fits the Republican narrative. Otherwise, if it doesn't bolster Jesse Waters' claims, then it's suddenly a moot point. Do you think that Jesse would have been claiming that political affiliation isn't important if he was a registered Democrat? And beyond that, reporters from the Philadelphia Inquirer spoke to classmates of the shooter, and they were very clear about the fact that the kid was a conservative. One passage from the reporting says that a classmate of the shooter recalled a mock debate in which their history professor posed government policy questions and asked students to stand on one side of the classroom or the other to signal their support or opposition for a given proposal. Quote, "The majority of the class were on the liberal side, but Tom, no matter what, always stood his ground on the conservative side. That's still the picture I have of him, just standing alone on one side while the rest of the class was on the other."
There you go. So I've got 3 clips. That's the first one. The second one's going to be about the violence on the right. That's from the same overall thing. But do you want to speak to that at all? And someone put in the chat there that he did say put a target on him. There we go. It's true. Biden did say put a target on him. It was either the Republican Party or Trump, but it wasn't. But that's what we're saying. I'm like, go give him hell. Can mean just try your best, or for some people could hear it as any means to an end. And that's why this whole it's almost a free speech conversation, why where I sit with whole free speech is, unless it's a direct call to violence, go and punch that dude in the head. You can't hold responsible the person who says the hyperbole versus the unhinged person who carries it out, no matter where it's from, Joey.
I mean, I just had a quick look at some of the imagery that Marjorie Taylor Greene has used, and it's Marjorie Taylor Greene election, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
together we will destroy communism and the Democrats, and she's posing with a 50 caliber rifle in the back of a Humvee or something like that.
Exactly,
and it's just I get political rhetoric, this is a battle for the soul of our country, all of this sort of stuff. But they've walked right up to that line, to the fact where a nudge, nudge, wink, wink would put you over it. But they know exactly what they're doing. And people have been talking about how dangerous it is for years.
Yep. And it's the perfect time. This is a little 45-second part of the same clip that Brian talked about, where he basically highlights a bunch of the violent rhetoric from the right.
It's not the Democrats or Biden who told rallygoers, again, to beat up protesters and that we'd pay for their legal bills. That was Trump. It's not the Democrats or Biden who laughed at Paul Pelosi being bludgeoned with a hammer. That was Trump. It's not the Democrats or Biden who called for military tribunals for Liz Cheney. That was Trump. It wasn't Democrats or Biden who called for General Mark Milley to be executed. That was Trump. It's not the Democrats or Biden who posted a baseball bat photo with Alvin Bragg and threatened death and destruction if he was charged. That was Trump. It's not the Democrats or Biden who reposted images on the Truth Social showing Biden hogtied in the bed of a truck. That was Trump. It's not the Democrats or Biden who laughed off a kidnapping plot against Gretchen Whitmer. That was Trump. We don't want Trump in power because we don't want violence. So let's not get it twisted.
Yeah, so there's part two, and that's kind of speaking to what you already talked about. Should I just go straight into the third part?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the third part is we have a look at the difference between the left's response to the assassination, i.e. the left's response to their political opponent being in danger, and then the right's response when Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked with a hammer. That's the two things we're about to look at for this last kind of 90 seconds of Brian for the day.
AOC, there's no place for political violence, including the horrific incident we just witnessed in Pennsylvania. It is absolutely unacceptable and must be denounced in the strongest terms. My heart goes out to all the victims, and I wish the former president a speedy recovery. Chris Murphy, there's no room in America for political violence. We should all condemn what happened today, and I'm hoping for the health of the former president and everyone else at the rally. And Joe Biden.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence, or for any violence ever.
No, that's the thing I'm kind of like, Joe, are you aware of the country? I mean, I get the sentiment in this instance, but are you aware that you probably live in the most violent country in the world with more deaths by gun than anywhere else? That in prisons, more people per capita more people than anybody else. So I'm just like, I get why you're saying this in this rhetoric, but I'd like to circle back to this conversation at another time, Joe. Maybe we could just do that about the violence in your country.
Period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized.
Meanwhile, here's how the right reacted when it's a Democrat who's the victim. Paul Pelosi's bludgeoned with a hammer, and Don Jr. posts, "Got my Paul Pelosi Halloween costume ready." Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene getting her audience to boo Paul Pelosi at a rally.
Where Americans are robbed, stabbed, raped, kidnapped, carjacked, and murdered. But the only crime victim you hear about from Democrats and the media is Paul Pelosi.
And of course, Trump himself poking fun at Paul Pelosi after he was attacked.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job.
So no, both parties are not the same. Let's not pretend that one doesn't immediately and unequivocally condemn violence while the other one revels in it. The only difference is that the pearl clutching on the right only begins when the violence happens to them.
There you go. So you'll see now why I wanted to play Brian's bits. It synopsizes everything perfectly. And none of this is to have any kind of, what's the word? We're not saying, so ha, there you go, you got it your time. It's actually just to take a step back and look at this broader issue and go, those on the right who are now blaming the left in America, even though the shooter was a Republican, and the left have a history of empathizing and wanting the best when it happens to people on the right, and the right have a history of mocking when violence happens to people on the left. You know, it's just, let's look at this isolated incident for an attack, a potential attack on this presidential candidate, and address it with the seriousness it needs. But if you want to start taking a step back and looking at the overall issue, yeah, Republicans, you got a few more questions to answer, I believe. Chewy.
Yeah. I had someone ask me, because we're obviously going to be talking about this tonight. It's like, what does it matter to us here in New Zealand? And I think when you look at how the American political discussion, the tone of it has changed over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
I see echoes of it in our own discussion. It has become more polarized, more extreme in a lot of ways. And certainly since COVID, we've seen things that, like, New Zealand's the country of, if anyone puts forward a strong opinion, everybody turns to them and goes, all right, mate, settle down. And now we're getting quite extreme conversations or positions like normalized. And I think you've said it quite a few times, if America sneezes, the rest of us catch a cold.
The world catches a cold.
And it's, I know people that live in the States that are scared of this coming election, but there is a hope that this will scare people into a direction of maybe trying to take this a bit seriously. But there are so many people over in the States that are disengaged from the process. They don't think anybody speaks to them. The system is actively set up to not listen to them, to not enable them to have their say. It's a deeply flawed and uneven system. So is this going to be a shock to the system, or is this a bump on a pathway that they're just locked into at this point?
Yeah, and that whole, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold, I think isn't clearer than the last Trump election. I mean, you look at the amount of conspiracy theorists, the media's evil, COVID vaccines are trying to control us, Bill Gates microchips, that all started in America under Trump and then flowed out through the world. The world caught a cold.
Well, I think there's a really good point here as well. The amount of Russian influence into the American sphere, the amount of money, disinformation bots into social media and that sort of thing to destabilize their biggest global threat or rival. And also that just ramped up when they went into Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they know that this is a way that they can just keep, Ukraine's biggest supporter, biggest supplier of weapons on the back foot. And they know if Trump gets in, Putin will run rings around him. NATO will dissolve, and Ukraine's support dries up.
Yeah.
So there's that. Russia has been playing a long, long game with the States.
Yeah, and look, it's we're getting not late, I wouldn't say, but it's been going for a while on the show. We said we'd play this though, so let's just play some. This is the woman who got the first interview with Trump, and let's just hear a little bit of what she's got to say, and then we'll move on to Paul Goldsmith.
Well, it's really interesting. I was just a few feet away from him, along with my daughter, who is a photojournalist. And he was aware of that because I was supposed to go to fly to Bedminster with him after the rally to do an interview with him. And so he called me this morning or this afternoon and said, and wanted to know if myself and my daughter were okay. So that's how the conversation started. And then I asked him if I could.
That's the other thing that Trump could do. If he shows care and empathy for the people around him, if he makes sure that the person who's lost his life, family's taken care of, whatever, that's another way that he could, I mean, it sounds horrible, but I'm just talking about the political game, could score big points with the American public as well to show genuine care and empathy, if he can, to those who are impacted by this as well.
Could interview him, just talk to him about those moments and about how this changed him. And that's when he said, well, I was going to do a speech that was going to be a real humdinger. I think those were his exact words. But, everything changed in that moment. And Abby, you have covered his events before. When you watch him at a rally, he always looks forward. Always looks forward. He never looks to his right or to his left. And he had put a...
That's a nonsense statement, by the way. Right, this is where they're linking in the God
very
thing.
Weird.
Yeah, of course he looks to the right and to the left occasionally. His what do they call them? Auto cues are kind of off that way as well. So this is part of the stretching for the auto cue. For the God claims.
A screen up that showed a chart, also never does charts. And he looked to his right, something he never does. And as he looked to his right, the bullet grazed right past his face. And I was standing right there when it happened. And he said in that moment, he understood that everything had changed for the country and for himself.
What is the speech going to be about now?
I think that's enough. You get the gist of it. So
what a weird statement from a woman with a really weird haircut.
Look, I don't know quite what's going to happen from here on in. I think that if Biden, we said this last week, if Biden stays, then Trump is more likely to win. And I just think this happening as well. There's just now going to be there was people arguing with me on Twitter over the weekend. It was so bizarre. Like when I said that thing, well, why do you think everyone's all going to now not vote for Biden, but they're going to go and vote for him? No, this will come down to 100,000 votes in 7 counties. I think it was Reuters reported the other day that there was 20% of the population of America is undecided. If he gets a 2 or 3% bump out of that 20%, it's all over. It's all over Red Rover. And there will be some people who don't buy into the political game, Chewy, who aren't in it every single day and kind of digging down deep into it. And they will go, oh man, well, they either try to take him out and that means we should vote for him because what are they saying that they don't want him to say? Or, or God save this man. Or they might say, gosh, we want that kind of fighter to be fighting for us. Those 3 options will impact enough Americans to likely give him what he needs to get over the hump, if he wasn't already getting it at the moment, Chewy.
Yeah. I have seen a comment there that again, we were talking about misinformation and that sort of thing at the top of the show. I have seen people talking about a teleprompter exploding, and maybe that was hit by the bullets first. And maybe that's what cut his ear rather than the bullet. I don't think it really matters in the scheme of things. No, I think that would certainly tie into the things that people are saying about the shooter about being a comically bad shot in his high school rifle club or whatever. But this is the thing, that absence of information, people will want to fill it, and people will want to fill it with information that makes their side look best, and we're all guilty of that. So just be aware. I did Peter put it here, we go. Consider your source, check the author, check the date. Old news stories may not relate to current events. Check your biases, and that is the hardest thing to do. Read the article, not just the headlines. Are there supporting sources? We know that image manipulation is easier than it's ever been. We know that everybody has an axe to grind in this discussion. So just rather than spreading the fire, try and stamp it out.
Yeah. Look, and the other thing is, it's a bit like what we were talking about last week about Biden at the debates. It doesn't really matter whether he has a form of dementia or not. That there's enough footage now that it's believed by enough people. This footage. There's that photo. I mean, the photo with him under the flag. I mean, whoever I saw something.
It's a hell of a shot.
Oh, I saw someone talking about. I wonder if this. There's it there. I wonder if this photographer realizes they've got one of the, most important photos of the 21st century. Not only because of what it dictates, but it's also, the beginning of the end of democracy is what the person was saying. So it not only shows what did happen, but it's also showing what's going to happen from here. But yeah, that's not even the best photo, because the best photo goes wider than that. But that image there is, in my opinion, the American election going to Trump.
Yeah.
That image right there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah. Now, in saying all of that, I don't think I've ever predicted an election correctly, Chewy. I've always been off. So we shall see. We shall see. Is there anything in the chat you want to get to before we get on to?
We've been covering so much ground. I actually haven't been starring a lot of stuff, but we do have one of our very rare Twitch comments that I thought I'd put up. Always the chat. I'm a staunch Democrat, so commented from the US, and there's no excuse for this whatsoever. Maybe the greatest irony, though, is that the Second Amendment was written for this purpose, so that people can kill those in power who are seen to be a threat to the people.
Yikes. Yeah. If the government should go, I can't think of the word of it, something or other government, to fight back against, and the words popped out.
Tyrannical government.
And that's not the funniest, but the thing about, how people, I've got a weapon to defend me and my property. That's not, the Second Amendment doesn't say that. It's to protect you from a government that goes tyrannical. I don't think there's a word either.
In case the King of England comes back.
Yeah. So actually the Second Amendment is only there for citizens to use weaponry against a tyrannical government. That's what the Second Amendment says. So all the people who buy them for self-protection and for protecting their partner, it's actually not what the Second Amendment's for. So anyway, let's not have a history lesson on the 2A stuff right now. Let's jump into our New Zealand story for tonight. Paul Goldsmith. As I said, this interview was fascinating. There was a lot going on there. We're not going to have a time to get to all of it. The whole second half of it is about the media, which was really interesting. You should go and check it out. Let's just have a look at this clip. They're now talking about. They've already talked about. I'll give Paul Goldsmith some credit, because he kind of threw Jack Tame at the start of this conversation, because they were talking about deterrence and crime deterrence, sentence deterrence. And Paul Goldsmith just went, no, this is not a deterrent. That's not why we're putting this in. We're not putting it in as a deterrent. We're putting it in to keep the most serious offenders off the street for as long as possible. And, I think it's terrible policy. But again, it's one of these moments you've got to kind of give it to Paul Goldsmith that actually you could see there was a whole line of questioning from Jack Tame that just took the legs out from under. Because straight away he just went, it's not about being a deterrent. It's about punishing people. And I mean, it's terrible policy. But when he gives a really straight, clear answer, because, you want him to fall into, yes, of course it's a deterrent. Then you bring the research out and it says, no, this is not a deterrent. But he just says, no, it's not a deterrent. It's about punishing people. You're like, oh, gosh, okay, at least you're being honest about it. So they talked about that. They talked about 3 strikes, what would be good, what wouldn't be good. Also in this, he talks about the new 3 strikes law has got a higher threshold before hitting those strikes. And they said in this, one of the reasons they've done that sort of watering down 3 strikes is they don't want to make it so hard that when Labor gets in, they just boot it out again. So they've actually gone in their heads, what would work under a Labor government as well. Now, again, I'm not supporting this policy, but you can see they've gone through a process to get there, and they're making it a higher bar to get hit with a strike, hopefully in their books, so that when Labor gets back in 3, 6, 9, 12 years, whatever it is, when Labor gets back in, it'll be high enough bar to not impact people for stealing a loaf of bread, but a low enough bar to put the most serious offenders away for longer. I'm giving you National's position, not the position of this show. Fair, Chewy?
You heard it here first. Pat is down for throwing kids in jail forever.
So this part of the conversation, they've gone on to talking about, the time one spends in prison, does that lead to greater reoffending, how long you spend in prison?
Would you agree that the longer someone spends in prison, the likelier they are to reoffend once they're reintroduced to society?
Well, look, it's an age-old challenge of trying to rehabilitate.
So would you agree with that?
Well, not always. Sometimes people are successfully rehabilitated.
Yes, sometimes they are.
Yeah, but it's hard work. It's very hard work.
So is the plan under 3 strikes to lock people up for their entire natural life?
No, but...
so these people will re-enter society at some point?
Eventually, but people are at their worst in terms of violent crime when they're young males, basically.
Right.
And the older they get, the more likely they are to not be quite as violent. But you also have the opportunity to do rehabilitation. And a big part of our justice approach actually is to put more resources into more effective rehabilitation, particularly for that group of remand prisoners, about half the prisoners who haven't yet been sentenced. So, that's a very much part of our plan. Because I think people sometimes think if we're trying to reduce the number of victims of crime, the starting point is to increase the chances of being caught and held to account. Yes, that's part of it. But it's not the only part of our justice response.
No, it's not.
And the broader thing is, how do you deal with the broader social context as well?
Yeah.
So point number one, Joe, we said last week, you have to be careful with this government because they use very safe sounding words, very balanced sounding words. Everyone needs to be equal. But the underlying policy behind that is incredibly dangerous. Oh, let's have a referendum on the principles of the treaty. The words he's using, Chewy, they sound reasonable and they sound thought out, but I don't trust them at all. I just don't trust them. There's been enough that they've gotten wrong and that they've overtly lied about or gone against what they said. I just don't trust them. I just don't trust them. That's my unease with this.
That was a good set of answers. That was excellently well done. And if they realise what they have there, which I'm sure they have, by pivoting to it's about having less victims of crime.
Yeah.
That is unfortunately a winner.
They got asked in this interview, he said, Jack made some really interesting points, which is like one of the points he made, and I'm just going to, or maybe actually we're going to show that, so I'll leave that out. But he asked about the numbers in gangs. What will be the target for you guys? You say there's too many. You say the numbers. What will be the target? And he wouldn't give that. And he said, our targets are aimed at youth offending and the fewer numbers of victims of crime. So that he wouldn't commit to how many gang members will there be, when you finish this term, because that's a really easy trackable number. So they say, but he wouldn't commit to that because he said all they've announced is about, fewer victims of crime and youth crime, the areas that they've given kind of guarantees for. The next part of the conversation I think is particularly interesting because they talk about taking the background of someone who is being sentenced into account. It used to be known as Section 27 and the background checks, and this government's canning them, even though Paul Goldsmith says, of course, you have to take into account the backgrounds of someone when sentencing. So it's like he's saying, you need to take into account, but we're getting rid of the way you take into account. And what it feels like in this clip, more so than any others, which is why I want to play it, is it's only Chewy. It's only about the money. It's only about the money. This will save money. This will save money. This will save money. How much? Don't know. This will save money. What about the research that says it might cost more? Maybe, but this will save money. So this is one of those instances where the research is literally thrown out, baby with the bathwater, and they want to save $1.50 so they can put it elsewhere, likely tax breaks and landlords, perhaps.
As well.
Yeah. Do you reckon that a criminal's background impacts their likelihood of offending?
What do you mean by that?
Do you think people from bad backgrounds are more likely to offend?
What do you mean by that? Just so we're clear, what do you mean by that? That was like, oh crap, where are we going with this? Hang on, where, because in his head he's kind of already going, if I say, that's why there's that pause there.
What do you mean by that?
Do you think people from bad backgrounds are more likely to offend?
Probably, yes.
Yeah. So to what extent should someone's background factor in a court sentence?
Well, it's definitely part of the Sentencing Act that judges have always been able to take stock of the background for people, and that's an important part of it. But fundamentally, it's never an excuse.
No.
Ultimately, no society can function if people aren't held personally.
Said nobody ever anywhere, Chewy.
You scrapped legal aid funding for those Section 27 background reports. Do you have official advice that will save money?
Yes, it's intended to save money, and we're going to put that money.
Do you have official advice that says it will save money?
We've got official advice that says we'll have to find out exactly how much it saves, because the justice system is complex, and so defence lawyers can act in different ways and try and pull different figures. So how much it saves is not precisely clear yet.
Okay,
but it will save
just to
some
be totally
money.
clear, do you have official advice that says scrapping Section 27 background reports will save money?
Yeah, it'll save some money. Just how much? Do
you have specific advice that says it will?
Yes, I think so.
You think so?
There's clearly been that the idea there is that if you're not funding those reports, what happened is that if you look at the graph, it's like an exponential rise where it started off about
And
6
this
years
is the
ago
money.
where
Money.
they started funding these reports.
Only
And
about
went
money.
up to $6 million a year. If we hadn't have changed, it probably would have been about $8 or $9 million a year.
So what he's basically saying is it's costing $6 million. It's going to cost $9 million. At no point does he go, is that a good use of this money? They just go, 6 million too much, and it's increased too much. 6 million too much, increased too much, so we're getting rid of it. It's like, okay, well, was it working though? If you've just admitted, Mr. Goldsmith, that actually a background of an offender should be considered when it comes to sentencing, and you're getting rid of one of the tools about figuring out what the background is when it comes to sentencing, what there? Well, cost too much. It was costing too much, too many people, costing too much. That's it. That's the depth of the answer.
Yeah.
And we certainly won't be spending that much on the alternative proposals.
Well,
so
my
we will
question
definitely
is,
save money.
Yeah, my question is if you have official advice to that extent.
We'll save money, we don't know how much.
So a briefing from your officials obtained by Newsroom in December suggested actually scrapping these reports could ultimately result in higher costs for the taxpayer. Quote, there may be new costs resulting from an increase in judicial requests for taxpayer-funded reports addressing matters that could have been provided in a Section 27 report. So, for example, expanded probation reports.
And look...
So you accept that your advice actually says that this could ultimately cost taxpayers more?
No, I don't think it will. The good thing
you don't think it will, but do you accept that that's what the advice says?
Well, look, our officials come up with all sorts of permutations and possibilities, but, fundamentally, it's about stopping what was a runaway train in terms of a cottage industry.
So you're saying it's just about the costs increasing. We're stopping the costs increasing. At no point does he say we're stopping it because it wasn't working. At no point was he saying we're stopping it to do something better that's going to work better. It's only the money, Chewy. At no point is this conversation from Goldsmith floated to the area of was it working in the sentencing or not. If it's costing $8 and it wasn't working, get rid of it. If it was costing $8 million and it was working amazingly, then keep it. Then this is the short-term thinking you keep talking about that they're doing right here in real time, live on television, when the only thing that they're trying to do is save money. They're not looking for a better, Mr. Luxon, outcome. They're looking to save money, and that's where they draw a line. Save money, stop. What if it ends up being worse? Save money. What if it costs you more? Well, that might happen, but right now, today, save money. And that's it. No more. No more. This
they
is
know the
about,
cost, but not the value.
Yeah, there you go. 30 seconds to go.
Costing more and more and more, and you had these people sort of cultural reports are us
but as a
going out there and
as a taxpayer, this potentially could cost me more.
No,
if your justice officials are right.
The I don't think so is carrying a lot of water, just quietly.
In all their reports, they come out with this. There's a potential risk that this could happen. There's a potential risk that this could happen.
Well, I've asked you for any official advice that says it'll save money, and you haven't provided that this morning.
I haven't got it. I haven't got a piece of paper in front of me that says that, but I'm confident that it will save money.
So I think it will. I'm confident it will. I think it will. Chewy, I've interrupted that several times. You're welcome to jump in now, sir.
Vibes. I also love Jack Tame's so good at this, right?
Yeah.
Here's a series of questions. Please speak to it.
Yeah.
Here's
what
the piece
research. Yeah.
Do you, Mr. Paul Goldsmith, recognize that this piece of paper exists? Look, it's like this, Jack. The paper could be there, or it might not be. I don't think that it is. Jack Tames holds up the piece of paper and goes, but here it is. We can all see it. Yeah. So in one interview, I've gone, oh shit, Paul Goldsmith's got his talking points in order. And this one's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah.
to absolutely shitting the bed in one interview. Fantastic.
Well, and that's kind of continue a little bit, because Jack asks a really, really good question, good logic line here. And it's basically, if this government is doing all these things, whatever it is, gang patches, Section 27 going away, boot camps, all these things, then why do we need to prepare for the prison population going up? Because if you've got this all solved, why do we need to put more people in prison if you're solving crime? If you're solving retail crime, talking about it with your advisory group, why do we need to increase prison beds? Now, one could say that you want to increase prison beds because there might be a funder or an agency that you are representing behind your ministerial veil, so to speak. But surely the idea of good policy around crime is for less crime to happen. If less crime happens, then fewer beds are needed in prison. The two things don't seem to be logically connected. So let's have a listen to that.
Violent and sexual offenders.
The problem is that New Zealand has really high recidivism rates, right? So ultimately, unless you're going to hold these offenders in prison forever, there's a very high likelihood that once they are released from prison, even if they've been in there longer than they might have been under previous governments or previous regimes, they are very likely to reoffend. So we as the public are basically delaying the likelihood of further crimes.
Yeah, and so it's a challenging issue. The alternative, of course, is to say, well, we'll give up, it's all too hard, and we'll just let them out.
The alternative, that is not the alternative.
That doesn't work very well either, and we've tried that experiment the last 6 years, which is to say we'll reduce the prison population irrespective of what's going on. And we're seeing an increase in violent crime, and people are very concerned about crime in their neighbourhoods.
So according to police, the number of gang members under the National Gangs List, which I know is a controversial list, continues to increase and continued to increase in the first 3 months of your government. So as a government that is absolutely laser focused on targets,
yes,
do you have an official target for gang numbers at the end of this parliamentary term?
Well, we want to know the two primary targets that we're working to is to reduce the number of victims of crime, and secondly to reduce the number of serious repeat youth offenders. They're the two published targets.
But I mean, that's a very measurable...
And yes, we would expect the gang members to go down. I would make the point, though, yes, and I've been out to many public meetings, particularly in the retail space. People are very impatient. They want to see change. They want to see it right now. Now, we're not going to be back in budget surplus in 6 months. It's going to take years. We're not going to solve the education problems in 6 months. We're not going to solve the health problems in 6 months. We're not going to have law and order restored in 6 months. It takes time, and it's about change.
Maybe about halfway through the next Labour term. Just thinking, maybe those things will get sorted out, especially the surplus one, perhaps.
Changing the settings, and that's what we're doing. We're changing the settings, and we're confident over time that'll lead to a safer New Zealand.
Big changes coming in the gang space, though. So if the number of gang members, as per your official numbers in February of this year, 8,367 in February of this year. So by the end of this parliamentary term, in another 2.5 years.
Yep. We want that number down, and I'm not going to give you a precise number, but it's going to be down. Well, I don't know exactly.
I mean, yours are the government of targets,
right? We're going to make it very difficult and uncomfortable to be a gang member. They're going to ban the gang patches in public. We're going to give police extra powers. We're going to do all these things
so give
to
us
make
a
their
target.
life very difficult.
It's the government that loves targets.
We haven't set a specific target in that space. Our target that we're really focused on is reducing the number of victims of crime. That's one factor in it, reducing the prevalence and intimidation of gangs in public, and that's going to part of it feed on it. But the real focus is to reduce the number of victims of crime. That's what really matters.
There you go. Chewy wasn't quite the same setup that I said it was going to be, so I've messed up my notes. But I wanted to play that clip anyway. There you go. Yep. Thoughts around, I guess the justice system under the national government.
Have you seen that video of a raccoon trying to wash some candy floss?
I have, and
it just disappears, and he's like, "Oh shit, where's it gone?" That was Goldsmith just there wondering where his candy floss had gone, because it was all so easy. And then, oh, do you have any numbers in mind? No, we don't. Let me try and get my candy floss back here, team. Just doesn't work. Yeah, like this. Here he goes. We're going to get tough on gangs. Jack asks him, what numbers? Oh, fuck. Just gone. It's going to be less. Based on what? Nothing. Based on nothing. And once again, there was an opportunity to explain and give people context why we know how many gang members there are now and why it's gone up so much in the last few years, because we never counted them. It was various police districts just taking a stab at it rather than a methodical count of what makes a gang member and how many there are of them. It gives no context to the fact that Australia is just going, this guy's got too many parking tickets. He's born in New Zealand. Let's fucking get rid of him. No family, no support. You'll be fine. Join a gang. None of it. no consequence, no context given. And look, this kind of ties into an article that I saw yesterday, where I think every town in New Zealand would have noticed something very interesting happening over the past couple of months. Put your hand up if you've seen police foot patrols in CBD areas. That's good, right? They're getting back to the basics of policing. They're cracking down and just being visible to stop retail crime. The article I saw was that it's coming at the expense of one particular facet: family harm. Too manpower intensive. They can't do both things. So we're getting police foot patrols and we're not looking at domestic violence as much. Isn't it good that New Zealand has such great stats on domestic violence? That's what was chosen.
Shocking.
But yeah, they could solve this by recruiting more police and retaining them, but they're still dicking them around on pay.
Yeah, I read, and this is another big story. I think it might have been on 3 News tonight. Pardon me, my bubbly water's got me. Legally police aren't allowed to strike, but basically they're threatening the government with potentially mass exodus because of the pay offers. Mass exodus. Remember, this government, 500 new, and they have said additional, and now they're being threatened with mass exodus. We'll do that tomorrow night. I'll note that down as well. See, I've already planned tomorrow night's show. This is a problem. Okay, please, can there be no news tomorrow? Please, no news.
Everybody just calm down.
Calm down so we can catch up. Chewy.
Hey, are we about to wrap up? Because I've got the worst thing to put up.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Are you ready? This is the worst thing that I found while looking around for little nuggets of information to add in.
Just while you're doing that, don't play any music or anything, because we've been kicked off YouTube a couple of times. I've had to take stuff out. So make sure there's no, your dog one, your dog one with the dancing dog, your little fellow dancing in the background.
Really?
Yeah, that music is copyrighted.
Fascists.
Yeah. So just anyway.
Okay. Yeah. This is the worst thing I found tonight.
Oh, good Lord, already.
Somebody went out and that photo fucking badly, I should say.
The
tattooed on themselves.
The thing about that, that's one of the things about that that's most terrifying, is that that's got an image of a Secret Service lady who could now possibly see herself on someone's skin like that for the next 50 years.
To be fair, those figures are barely recognizable as humans.
That's true. That's true.
And look, this could be an impromptu add to your serial project of how to know whether you're brainwashed or not.
This is what it looks like to be brainwashed. Yeah.
The decision making process involved in this, the answer is yes. Yes, you are brainwashed. You are in a cult. That is, like, it offends me on so many levels. It's so shit as a tattoo. Terrible tattoo. And then there's the content and the decision-making process. It's terrible.
I interviewed someone once, and I could probably find it on the internet, actually. Have you heard of this new thing called the internet?
Look, I used to be a big fan, but I think ever since it came in, things have got worse.
And during the Obama, whatever it's called, race with Obama-Romney race, he had the Romney logo tattooed on his face. Oh, yep, here it is. I'll have a look. Here we go. This is miles ago when I was just doing this by myself, sort of independently. Where am I doing that one? There he is. That's the dude. That's the photo.
Oh, dear God. Like, I love tattoos, but holy shit.
There you go. See? The Romney symbol on the side of his face.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
That was my first foray into playing with independent media on the internet. And look at that. We've advanced over the preceding 12 years, and we've grown ourselves to 7 viewers rather than back there where I had 1. That's pretty good. That's like a 700% increase. Doing pretty well. a couple of super chats that have come in. I'm looking forward to putting Mr. Arvid's super chat in there, which has been there for ages. 69 Scariot says, wonder how much it costs to send more people to jail and for longer. Yeah, 100%. I know I did a big setup for that story and then it was the wrong part of the story, but I wanted to show that anyway. But it's still a very good question. I think, sometimes you can just read a headline and you get the whole story. I mean, the headline of that question is, why do we need to increase prison sentences if you guys are going to solve the problem with crime? So it's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
And Mr. Arvids for his late fee that came in about an hour ago. Appreciate that, but there you go. That just makes it look like you're really, 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 really late now, even though you did it about an hour ago. All right, so that's us. So remember, whānau, there is no news allowed to happen over the next 24 hours to give us a chance to catch up. Also, remember, if you want to be a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. As a reminder, on here, hopefully some stage this week, maybe even tomorrow, we'll see how my timetable works out, we will be uploading the clips from the panel that Chewy and I spoke at last Monday afternoon. And look, even if you don't want to see the content, you're basically seeing Chewy knocking it out of the park. It's basically a stand-up routine from Chewy, getting the whole audience laughing. So that's worth it just by in and of itself. But you get early access to various things we do, some other bits and bobs. It might be time for a meetup this weekend, actually. We'll figure that out. But that's patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Anything else, sir?
No, that's it. No more news. Done.
Do we need to put anything into the ether out there to give you some nice customers tomorrow? Is that what we need to do?
Oh, look, I think my comment of just if everyone could just calm down a bit can go just generally in life for everyone everywhere.
All right.
I think that'd be just to the benefit of all.
Everyone needs to calm down. Just calm down.
Pick up the news, Big Hairy style, keeping it loose.
Stay calm.
New Zealand, where the politics play.
Just stay calm, everybody.
They bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time for cheese, just act straight up. Bad and chewy, never backing up. From the Cape to Bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble.
It's a lot of names, eh? Still going.
Big long list.
Big long list. And remember, if you want to get on that list, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Especially have a look at the end of the coffee runners, that we call them? I forget, because there's like 5 brand new names there as well. Also, if you want to win yourself $500, we're looking for someone to design us a new theme that would play now. And you can just head to our Facebook page or go to my Twitter feed at Pat Brittenden to see all the kind of terms and conditions, T's and C's, and how you get involved if you want to win yourself $500. You've got about 2 weeks to get those entries in. That's it for me, Chewy.
That's it for me as well. We'll see you tomorrow in some
Be
form.
great, everybody. Remember, no news for the next 24 hours, please. Everyone just sit very, very, very,
That's
very
it.
still.
You're cut off.
Very still. We'll see you tomorrow from 9 p.m. for another edition, Big Hairy News. Hey, team.
Cheers, man.